Hi, Tracy.
Hey, Patty.
You got that book out there again?
I sure do. I've got chapter 7 ready to go.
I'm excited. I want to see what happens. I want to see um, if he believes the horse or not, whether he should be soft or if he should be following along or if he shouldn't be following the trainer.
Yeah, I'm wondering too what he'll decide because sometimes, we get good advice from people. Sometimes we get maybe not the best advice from people. So we really have to think about what we want to do for ourselves, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's find out. This one's chapter 7, and it says he's getting ready. So let's get the speaker view up. There we go. So the next morning, Happy woke up to the sound of many horses whinnying. He had never heard anything like it. He must have slept through it the previous morning. But how? It was so noisy. Some of the horses' voices were high and playful, while others were deep and dignified. They were all excited. It was feeding time. Looking out his stall window, Happy could see Diane coming down the aisle with a wheelbarrow.
Wonder what's in the wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Happy had seen Mrs. Shoemaker use a wheelbarrow in her garden before, but Diane's wheelbarrow was full of grain. Happy scraped his front hoof against the ground as Diane neared his stall. He felt like he had never been so hungry in his life. "Good morning, Happy," Diane said as she came up to his stall door. "You look chipper today. Andrea will be here soon, and we'll get her to tack you up." Happy knew what that meant. Andrea would put a saddle on his back and a bridle around his head, and then she would take him for a ride. Diane smiled as she poured out a scoop of grain. Happy looked into his feed bucket to make sure Roscoe wasn't there. Remember, he reminded him to check. Then he plunged his head into the grain. Yum! As he ate, Happy thought about what Cobalt had said the day before. The sleek black horse had been right. Andrea would be the first person to ride him at the Big Apple barn. If Cobalt knew that, his other advice was probably right too. Happy would have to show Diane and Andrea that he was boss. Happy wanted to be a good school pony, but he was still young. He wanted to have some fun too. He didn't want Diane to work him too hard. After Happy finished his grain, he started to pace in his stall. He wished he had a run before what he was going to do out in the field. His legs felt bouncy. He needed to give them a good stretch. Why did he spend yesterday afternoon eating grass instead of running around in the field, he wondered. Happy wasn't used to being in a stall all the time. At Shoemaker Stables, he could run and play wherever he wanted. It wasn't too long before Andrea appeared at Happy's door. "Hey, Happy," she greeted him. "Are you ready for a ride?" Happy was ready. At least he thought he was. He needed to be out of his stall, but he was a little worried about Andrea riding him. Andrea opened the door and took hold of Happy's halter. She led him out of the stall and stopped next to a set of chains, one on each side of the aisle. "These are cross tiles, Happy," Andrea explained. "I'll hook the chains onto your halter so you know to stand right there." Happy watched as Andrea attached the chains to his halter. This was the first time he'd ever been in cross ties before. Mrs. Shoemaker had always just tacked him up in his stall. "That's good," Andrea said. "I'll be right back." Happy watched as Andrea walked away. He stepped forward to see where she was going, but he was jerked back. The cross ties stopped him. He felt the chain strain against his halter. Now he was all alone, and he was afraid to move. Where did Andrea go? It felt like he'd been standing there forever before Andrea came back. When he saw her, Happy nickered in relief. Nay! So he would be out of the chain soon. Phew! Andrea carried a saddle in one arm and a bucket of brushes in the other. Brushes! Happy had forgotten how he loved to be brushed. "I'm going to pick your hooves first," Andrea explained. Happy knew that Andrea needed to pick his hooves. She would use a small metal tool to clean out his feet, but Happy didn't really like it. He had to lift his hooves one at a time and try to balance on only 3 legs, because he has 4 legs, and when you pick up one leg, you only have 3 left. So he had to stand on 3. It made him a little nervous, especially with those pesky chains attached to his halter. Andrea was fast and moved from leg to leg, picking up clods of dirt from every hoof. He hadn't even liked it when Mrs. Shoemaker picked his hooves, and Andrea was practically a stranger. He watched as Andrea dropped the hoof and picked up the next. Happy would let her pick up his hooves all over again, as she would give him a good brushing. "You look pretty clean," Andrea said, "so I'll just get the dust off." With a swift, stiff motions, Andrea whisked the brush over Happy's back and legs. He could hardly even feel it. Mrs. Shoemaker would never have brushed him like that. Some horses might not like to be brushed, but Happy loved it. The harder, the better. Andrea barely touched his coat with the brush. Happy could still feel the itch of the dirt close to his skin. Then Andrea plopped the saddle on the back. Happy tossed his head in surprise, but the chain snapped at his halter. He didn't like the cross ties, and he didn't like having the saddle slammed on his back like that. Happy stomped his foot. "Calm down, Happy. It's just a saddle," Andrea scolded. Then she reached around to the girth. It would go under Happy's belly and hold the saddle in place. As Andrea buckled the girth, Happy flinched. It felt too tight. He put his ears back, and he stomped his foot again. "Oh, that's not that bad, is it?" Andrea said, now holding the bridle. She put the reins over Happy's head and unhooked his halter. This was all happening so fast. Before Happy knew it, the cold bit was in his mouth, and Andrea was fastening the bridle in place. Just like that, he was ready for his first ride at Big Apple Barn. But suddenly he didn't feel ready. His saddle felt like it didn't fit. Was there a fold in the back of the pad? It didn't feel right. Maybe there was dirt on his back. Something wasn't right.
Poor Happy.
And he was sure his girth was too tight. Happy put his ears back again, hoping that Andrea would help him. That's one way horses communicate, is with their ears. "Let's go to the outside ring," Andrea said, and she walked ahead, pulling on the reins. Happy followed reluctantly, not so eager to go. Once he got out of the barn, Happy stopped worrying about his saddle. His legs were bouncy again, and he needed to run. It was all he could think about. "There's our new pony," Diane said, smiling. She and Ivy sat at the fence next to the riding ring. The ring was much bigger than the one at Shoemaker's stables. There was plenty of room for a pony with lots of energy. "Yep, here he is," Andrea replied. "Do you want me to get on?" "Sure," Diane said. "Let's see what he's made of." And with a swing of her leg, Andrea was on Happy's back, putting her weight in the saddle stirrups and shortening the reins. She made the first clicking sound with her tongue, then gave Happy a light nudge with her heels, and off Happy took at full speed.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy, I wonder what happens next. You'll have to tune into our next session to hear what happens in this big ride he takes with Andrea. What do you think?
I don't know what's gonna happen.
Tune into the next one. Bye.